We'll get it down. Welcome to our video today. I'm Melissa Nielsen.
And I'm Eric Nielsen.
And we are going to talk about dad stepping up, but also a little bit about mom stepping up too. I think we're just going to talk about this concept of being equally yoked. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a Judeo-Christian concept, and so some people like back away from it and go, I don't want to talk about that. But I think we need to talk about it because I think it's an important concept. I think it's a concept that a lot of people don't understand. So what does it mean to be equally yoked?
It means you're sharing the burdens.
Right, exactly. Go ahead.
And I mean, if you think about...
I was thinking about an oxen.
If one of them's moving and the other one's not, it's going to go in a circle. It's not
Right.
anywhere.
So being equally yoked means that you're both carrying the burden.
Yeah.
And that's going to look different for both parties. You know, maybe one person works outside the home and one person doesn't. And maybe both people work at home, like us. Or maybe both people work outside of the home. I mean, that's often the case too. So it's about understanding everybody's responsibilities, but more than responsibilities, because I'd like to think that
understanding the energy that those responsibilities cost and
that
what everybody's limits are.
What their limits are. And then I was thinking too, you know, when we say the word responsibilities, excuse me, y'all are the first people we've talked to this morning besides ourselves, so my throat's a little groggy. When we talk about responsibilities, there's almost a heaviness to it. So I was thinking more of like desires that you want to do for each other. Mm-hmm. You know, I think we get so caught up in getting done what has to get done that we forget the loving part of that equally yokedness, rather than looking at it from that perspective. And so that's really what we're talking about today, like the little things that you can do, the little things that you can both do for each other. Because I don't think they're big. I think that we live in a time when marriages are made or broken, or partnerships are made or broken on big things.
Yeah.
But they all start with those little things. It's all sorts of this pick thing that we tend to do to each other.
And then you have the thought process of, they don't appreciate anything I do. They don't understand how hard I work.
Right. It's the alwayses and the nevers, those absolutes.
Yeah.
And so, and we see that on both sides. We see that for men and for women. Mm-hmm. Like, all the time. We work with several different couples, and when a man or a woman, because like I said, we've seen it both, says she never or he always. I'm like, really? Like, always?
Especially if you're dealing with relationships where one's choleric and one's phlegmatic.
Right. So I think temperament is huge. Mm-hmm. I think it's gigantic in this. And I think that that's one thing that I want to talk about with regards to these very little things. So like as a choleric, I like to have things in order, and it stresses me out when they're not in order. But as a phlegmatic, he knows it. And so what things do you do to appease my choleric self? And then I will talk about things that I do to appease your phlegmatic self.
Well, there's things that, I mean, because overall I don't want to be uncomfortable and be in uncomfortable situations. And so there are things that I know will set you off, and they're small things that show that someone's being careless. And there are things that I might like shrug off and think whatever, but they'll eventually grate on you. And
right.
And they could be simple things like how things are done in the kitchen, or kids leaving lights on all the time.
I mean, it's one of those things that's really knowing each other and taking that time, because they are little things. They're really little things. Mm-hmm. But those little things like inform how I'm going to feel when I get back in the kitchen, or how I'm going to feel when I walk in the house and I see all the lights on, and they're things that maybe on the whole wouldn't be super important to you.
Yeah. But
you know that they're important to me, and so because you like to be comfortable and you don't want me to be frustrated.
Well, it's like our adult son that moved in with us for a few months, and we were all trained, you know, and rightfully so a long time ago, that you don't leave the toilet seat up when you're done in the bathroom.
Right. When you have as many women as we do, even though we have equally amounts, more men than women in our home. Yeah.
Well, not right now.
Not right now, but like overall, like when you look at the the Big Nielsen group.
Yes, and so he lived with
He lived with
dudes
men
for
for 2 years, and it was like he would. It wasn't like he couldn't. He just wouldn't break the habit.
Yeah, and so that was an example I watched of like after a while of him being reminded to do it and not doing it chronically and constantly, like it would start like this resentment would grow and
I swear I
build.
felt like it was a big
And
giant middle finger
every time we'd walk by the bathroom and the light had been left on and the toilet seat was up, it was like he's sticking it to us again.
It's really easy to get very frustrated.
And
Really easy.
and you know, and the only way that everybody got feeling better about each other was that he moved out, and now everybody gets along better.
I know he said to me a couple of weeks ago, "Hey, Mom, we haven't had a fight in like a month." I said, "Oh, that's because you moved out a month ago. I think maybe that's why."
And we would explain, you know, this is something that makes
And he's
people,
an adult, like our oldest son is an adult phlegmatic, and
Yes.
so very phlegmatic.
I mean, I think this is a good example, even though it's
I
not
think it
like
is, too.
necessarily something that happened between you
No,
and I.
but I think it's a good example because one of the conversations that has come from he and I discussing that, and even though he laughs at me and thinks that no other woman is going to be nearly as picky as I am, I say to him, this will help you. And we have 2 cameras going, that's why still looking at both places. But I will say to him, honey, this will inform the rest of your life and how you deal with your wife. And he's like, oh, silly lady, no, it won't. I think you just wait.
He's like, you're the one choosing to be offended, not me.
Right, rather than, hey, Mom, what can I do to help? Because
Yeah.
there are so many things that, as a phlegmatic, that I would do for him because I love him and I think about him just like I would for
Yeah.
you. So this doesn't just go to partners. I think that once you understand it with partners, it's easier than to do those things for your children.
Yeah.
Because it comes second nature. It comes very, very easy for you to be thinking in that way.
Yeah.
And so things that I do for Eric, when we go to the drive-thru, I know exactly what I want. And I make sure that everybody else in the car knows exactly what they want because he gets overwhelmed at the drive-thru.
Yeah, and
It's not like we go to the drive-thru every day, but we're talking about, like In-N-Out. Thank goodness they only have like 10 things on their menu at In-N-Out. But
when I'll get frustrated because I go, just order what it says on the menu, but everybody wants to modify everything. And it's like, why can't you just order it and pick off what you don't want?
So it's easier if he's the driver, honestly, for me to say, I'll order. And I just...
Because it's all, everybody has
to do.
special instructions for everything. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you know.
That stresses him out. Kelly says, Kelly's my assistant. She's so funny. Her husband is like, in many ways, a carbon copy of you. You guys are so funny together. She says, that's Adam, her husband. I just think it's funny because something that would like a sanguine would change her order like 15 times.
When I was a kid and we
Yeah,
would go out to eat, I think my dad would get frustrated if, like, because he felt like everybody should just order the same thing and be done.
Your dad's so silly. He's so silly. That would never work.
Because he
for me.
didn't want it to be complicated.
So when we go to any place, go to a restaurant or someplace that has a, where you order, I don't order for kids. I've taught them from a young age to tell the waitress or the person behind the counter what they want because that is too much for me to think about.
And often when we've gone through the drive-thru, it's inevitable that I'm going to have to park and get out and go back and get whatever sauces they forgot to put in the bag.
Exactly. So
And I would just be like, screw it, I'm going to eat it and go.
yes, he would be, but because he is very mindful of the comfort of the rest of the people in the automobile.
Yes.
He will stop and he will get out of the car. He will say, "What are you missing?" And he will get before he even opens his food. And he will get out of the car and he will go and check it all out and make sure that everybody's got what they need.
Yeah.
So those are just things because he knows that. I mean, on a very base level, he knows that he's not going to be comfortable if everybody else is uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think that's a disconnect that we see when we've talked to people where
Other phlegmatics, yeah.
You do have I'm fine. If other people aren't fine, that's their own problem.
Right. No, and I do think that, and I see it with other phlegmatics even. I think that they, and I think it's worth noting that this isn't something that was ingrained in Eric since he was a young man. Eric and I got married when we were in our 30s, and I had been married before, and that my practice husband he was not about doing things differently. And so that created a big problem in our marriage. And I was really strongly steeped in temperament. So when Eric and I got together, and I introduced this concept of temperament to him, you were like, wow, the whole world, like, because it really, it's like putting on a separate set of glasses. And you go, holy crap, everything makes sense now. Because it does make sense. When you understand temperament and you understand why people do things that they do and like the whys behind everything, I think it helps so much. And it helps you then be able to really work on those little things that would make the other person happy. And so, apart from ordering at the drive-thru, because that's a really simple, small thing, I would say things that I do as a choleric sanguine to help this phlegmatic sanguine is I don't nag at him about, he likes to make piles, and I don't nag at him about those piles. And because they're not all over the house.
We set it up so my side of the bed.
We set it up so his side of the bed is
side of the room from the door,
right. So you can't see his piles.
Disorganized.
So that was like something that I thought, well, what's going to make me feel good and him feel good at the same time? What's going to make him feel good? Because in the other house it wasn't like that. In the other house, his side of the bed was what you saw when you first walked in the door. And even though I didn't get on his case then, I felt like I was picking things up, and it wasn't because I was upset at you. It was just because that's what I do. That's what the cleric in me does. I see it, I pick it up, and I find something to, like, I'm the ultimate sorter.
Yeah.
And so I wanted him to not feel uncomfortable about that. And so we made it so that his side of the bed, and he'll say, man, I need to clean up my side of the bed. And I'm like, I don't even know what's on your side of the bed because I don't walk over there.
Well, if you remember when I worked at the newspaper.
Yeah.
That my desk looked like there was just a big pile of papers.
I don't even know.
And in my head, it made sense.
You know
to
where
myself,
every single thing was.
Even though it looked
without a to-do list.
It looked like a mess. I understood it.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that phlegmatics are incredibly methodical in their mind, and
which in a way that might not make sense to
other people. I think that
might not look intuitive to somebody else.
Absolutely, because I think it's important to note that, because this man never needs a to-do list. Rarely does he need a grocery list, but it's also he's got a fair amount of will control, and that's come over time. And we sort of laugh that it was because you are a completist when it comes to video games and things like that. That maybe that's where some of your will control came. It didn't come from knitting. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on there. But he because they are long suffering and methodical. That's played into a lot of other things.
It came from like that Ninja Turtles Nintendo game in 1986.
That took you that's where his long suffering came from. Apparently. Anyway, so I think that it's important to note what different temperaments will find helpful. Okay, so Brianna says, "Good morning. I'm starting my new life today, and this video is such a part." Oh, I'm so glad you joined us. She says this video is such a big part of it. Thank you so much for joining us today, Brianna. I love it when we have people joining us live, because it lets us talk to them and lets them ask questions and leave comments. And so if you're ever not joining us live and you're watching, you want to leave comments, you can still leave comments, because I still address those comments all the time. So okay, let's talk about I said things that I do, and those are they're really minor things, but those minor things could be big. If I nagged at him about the piles, if I nagged at him about not keeping a to-do list, if I nagged, and I have to be honest, the 20-something me probably would have nagged, because I wasn't a very balanced choleric at that point. And so, if you are a nagging wife, I think you have to step back and you have to say, okay, why am I nagging so much? What is so important? And is there a way for me to not nag? Is there a way for me to not be so hung up on X, Y, and Z? I think what's funny is that we don't, often it's easy for the cleric to fall into the mothering role. and it's like they allow it to happen. And for me, I just go, well, if you don't have socks, honey, it's probably because they're in that pile next to the bed. So, and I don't even have to say that to him, but that's something I would say to Samuel, who is also phlegmatic. I don't know what God's trying to tell me. I have 2 phlegmatic sons and a phlegmatic husband. It blows my mind. It's probably to help balance the choleric in me.
That you can't necessarily control everything.
Is I can't control everything.
One thing I think that's informed me, and I think informs some couples sometimes, is when you have a situation where one of them has to leave for a week.
Oh,
because then you realize how
baptism by fire.
all the different things that person does that you don't have to do.
It's baptism by fire, and I hear
And that goes both ways.
it does. It totally does. I think it goes. Totally think it goes both ways. Eric's been doing some little driving for Uber lately that we hope he doesn't have to do for very long. But I was so used to having him there every night, having, we have this great nighttime routine, we have this great afternoon routine, all those things, and that has had to change, and so I quickly realized, because the choleric in me is fast, nothing gets past me. I feel like Drax in Nothing Gets Past Me, Guardians of the Galaxy, but I quickly realized, wow, after day 2, I was like, wait a minute, why is this stuff falling apart? Oh, this is why this is falling apart. These are the things that Eric contributes. So I realized it really fast. I think the first time, what about the first time I went out of town? I was trying to think, maybe the time that I went and Soraya was 18 months old.
Yeah.
And that was baptism by fire. Because didn't she cry for 3 nights?
Yeah.
So I think that if you are worried about your partner and your kids, just leave them for a couple of days, and it sorts itself out, right?
Yeah. I mean, what we've talked about, how if you were gone for a while, school stuff might suffer, but if I was gone for a while, you might not log into anything and pay any of the bills.
Yep.
True
statement.
And so
True statement.
there's things
because the sanguine in me would be like, I can't think about that right now. The choleric in me would be talking about, oh, don't you have some bills to pay? I mean, no, I got to work on this first.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that's happening automatically that we're not thinking about, but then we don't think about that the other person is doing it because
Absolutely.
they're automatic things that are happening behind the scenes. And so if you're not thinking about, oh yeah, that person is doing this and this and this, you can go to the place of man,
oh, absolutely,
you're not doing anything.
And I think, but I do want to say really quick before we get too much farther down that road, I want to be perfectly clear that even though he pays the bills, and I am saying this for the benefit of all of the people that say, oh, well, he makes me do everything, or oh, she makes me do everything. Even though he pays the bills, I know exactly what he's paying.
Well, because
we discuss that.
Yeah, we have conversations.
So even though he does the physical act of doing it, we absolutely have the conversation about it.
Yeah, I might have the passwords in my head, but we have a conversation about
all the
when
passwords
and what and how and
right.
We
How
got
much
X
and-
amount of money, and
Right.
I'm going to spend this.
So I
on
wanted
that.
to make
That's
sure
a
I
good
said
point
that
to
because
make
that
it clear.
comes up a lot. Like the
Well, that woman we talked to that said, "Oh, I was sitting in the tub with my phone, and I paid all the bills, and then I realized that we had 12
that we had
cents
12
left.
cents left, and I was like, "Excuse you? You had
And
12 cents left
then
for 2
my
weeks?"
husband was mad at me. So yeah, I mean, her job might have been to pay the bills, but because they didn't make a
Because they
plan,
didn't communicate.
then they got in a big fight about it.
They did, in front of us. It was weird. It was
So
weird.
it's not a matter of someone's only knows what was going on with the money. It was just we're talking just about the physical act of
Right, the physical act of that's all I wanted. I wanted to
not
make sure I
the
said that.
allocation of resources.
And those people are not clients, so
No,
I felt like that was an okay thing to share.
but also I think that there's a problem where one person thinks their contributions are way more epic than the other person's contributions.
It's probably a dramatic, unbalanced melancholy that
Yeah.
might think that, or unbalanced choleric. I could totally see that from an unbalanced choleric. That they think, especially if there's ego involved. I think especially if maybe that unbalanced choleric has a big, important-ish job. Like maybe they're a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant or, something big that's heavy where they bear the burden of a lot of other people. Sometimes it's easy for them to forget that they also have to bear the burdens of what goes on at home. I think that that's an easy thing to forget when you have a big job like that. And it is not because that person has become a bad person. But I think anytime ego is involved too much and we don't work to balance that ego, it's really easy to have it tip to the wrong side and to be a little butthurt if one of the partners asks for you to do the dishes or for you to... because I regularly encourage moms that I work with to say, honey, if you would do X, Y, and Z for me, it would help so much. And they're small things. Excuse me. I often ask, so especially moms that don't have any time to themselves, I ask, what time does dad go to work? Oh, he doesn't go to work until 7. So you could conceivably get up at 5:30 or 6 and go for a 15-minute walk by yourself, right? And I often get this bristling of, well, then that would mean that he would have to get up earlier and that he would have to... And I go, but it's conceivable, right? Like, that's where the conversation starts. The conversation starts with, honey, I know you really want to stay in the bed for as long as possible before you go to work. But see, I have to be with these people all day. And I really like to call them my children, our children, not these people. And I call them these people when I'm exhausted. And so, and I do. Like, in my house, I go, you people need to stop. They're like, oh, no. She's tired. We've done something to cross the line. but you want them to be these people that you love, not just these people. And so those are the words that I often will say to moms. This is how you approach dad with that. You approach dad with, I just want 15 minutes to gather my thoughts for myself. You get that 15 minutes when you're driving to work or when you're, whatever other thing that he does. Ask for 15-minute blocks. And honestly, if there's a dad that says no, please send him to us so we can help save your marriage, because that's crap.
Well, I think about when you talk about these people, and I remember we had a big disagreement with Ellie, and she referred to us as you people. You people.
And I was like, oh, she did not.
And, well, because it connotates that there's an
it takes emotion out of it, too.
Well, and there's an us and them rather than like we're all on the same team trying to work towards something that's better for everybody.
Exactly.
Once you start, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense, because once you start doing the us and them and these and those, it takes the emotion, the connection away. Yeah. And so once that connection is taken away, it's a lot easier, excuse me, to be rude to somebody. Yeah. It's so much easier. In that situation, she was so rude to us. Oh my goodness. Teenagers are so much fun.
Yeah, you're using this against me, and it's like, we're not, when did we become against each other?
Right. And I think that that's important to remember, like with partnerships too. Mm-hmm. It's about you working together. So when mom is frustrated, before you go guns blazing at dad about how frustrated you are and venting, you have to take a deep breath. Especially, I want to say, just in maybe a traditional situation where dad might be working all day and maybe mom's at home with kids, or if mom and dad are both working. It's really easy to be in your own bubble, your own sphere of this is what's going on in my world, and to think that means that that's what's going on in his world too. So I think it's important to check in with each other, like have a partnership council every day. It doesn't have to be long. It can be the 5 minutes before you go to bed. It could be the 5 minutes after the two of you get up in the morning. It could be on texting during dad or mom's lunch. It could be, on some kind of break. It could be a phone conversation. But check in with each other so that you know what's going on in each person's world, because that's really where the breakdown starts. The breakdown starts when you don't know what's going on in the other person's world, and then you assume that nothing's going on and that they have all the glory or they have all the fun, and rather than communicating.
Oh, because you can have the problem of expecting the person to read your mind.
Yes.
And then you take on...
I didn't take that class in college. I'm not sure if anybody else took that class in college.
Well, then someone can take on extra stuff and go, I'm just going to do this all myself.
Right, and I think that that's a lot of people pleasing
They're just gonna
men
mess
and
it
women
up.
will do that.
They're just going to mess it up, or they're not going to do it. And I've talked
Yes.
and talked, and I'm just going to do this all myself. And then like they do all that
The
stuff
cleric me would
themselves.
totally do that.
And then the resentment forms, and then it builds, and
Yes.
then it's like now I'm doing everything,
Right.
and then there's a day where there's a blow up.
Exactly, and you don't want that blow up. That blow up is not any fun, and so you have to be very methodical about why you're doing things. Sometimes I think, especially if it's something that's somebody else's responsibility, you have to say to yourself, "Am I doing this because I don't have the patience and I don't want to wait for the other person to do it?" And if that's the answer, then you have to ask yourself, "Am I going to be resentful because of that?" If the answer to that is no, then just do it. Like this is the cleric in me talking. If the answer to that is no, like no, I'm not going to be resentful if I'm wiping off the table that a kid forgot to wipe off. But if I am going to be resentful, that's when you have to start taking it to the other person.
Yeah.
That's when you have to say, "Honey, I really get frustrated when you do X, Y, and Z. I know I do some things that are super frustrating." Don't ever say to your partner, "You make me so mad when," unless it's something that you've talked about a lot, without taking the blame for not saying anything. Especially if it's something, like I always think about this argument that your parents had. Oh my goodness, if they started watching our videos, I'd feel really bad. No, I probably wouldn't, because she'd laugh. I think about that she's talked about this spaghetti sauce that she made for years and years and years. And your dad all of a sudden was like, "I've hated that for the last 20 years. And they go, "Who does that? Who doesn't say on day 2 of having it, I hate this?"
Yeah.
He just let her believe that he liked it, so she made it. And so that's where you got to communicate. If your piles on the side of the bed really bothered me, and I let it build and build and build and build and build and never said anything, then that's my fault for not saying anything. It's not your fault for leaving the pile. It's my fault for not saying anything.
I remember we were there first married, or we were dating, and we were eating this dinner, and there was something that I really did
yes.
like. And then, like, when I found out that it was something that a friend made for you and canned and gave you, and that you didn't make it, I was so relieved that I
My
did.
dear friend.
Because I didn't want to have that for dinner all the time, if that's what it was.
My dear friend, just in case she's watching, so I'm going to give her the whole story. Just in case you're watching, Chris Peterson, who I love and just love you to pieces. She, it was before we were married.
Yeah.
Because she was so generous to share some of her food storage with me, because I was needing it. I was hurting. I was a single mom, 3 kids, and she had this amazing room that was her food storage, and she said, "Come shopping with me." Excuse me. And so I did. And she hands me this can of this jar of carrots that she had lovingly canned. And so I was like, "Well, I like carrots. We're gonna try these carrots." I don't remember having it as strong. I think they were pickled. I think
They were
that's
pickled
why.
carrots. Yeah.
He does not do pickled. So this was very early in our relationship. And he thought that I had canned them. And so he didn't want to say anything. Because he was raised in a house that you don't say anything for 20 years when things that your parent or your partner makes that you hate.
Yeah, when I was growing up, if you wanted to eat, you didn't make fun of it, the food, or make a joke about the food, or anything. You ate it, and that was it.
Otherwise, his mom might not ever make that again. And so he really was afraid to say something about this jar of carrots. And when he found out that they came from my dear friend Chris, who, again, I love tremendously, he was like, "Oh, thank goodness. Please don't ever make those carrots again." I really hated those carrots. And it was because they were pickled.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just was funny. I think that you have to communicate. If you don't communicate, things build. Mm-hmm. And that goes for all temperaments. I think that if you're sanguine, you better be keeping a list, because you forget everything. So if you're a sanguine and you're listening and you find yourself in scrapes with your partner a lot, my challenge to you today, to do it today, as you're listening to this, is to make a to-do list of things that your partner loves that you could do that are small. Little things. I mean, little tiny things. I'm talking like do the dishes, sweep the floor, that are outside of what you normally have agreed to. We had this conversation about bringing flowers the other day. You said, what was it? You said, are you sad that I don't bring you flowers? I'm like, heck no, I'm not sad that you don't bring me
I
flowers.
thought it was not something that you're into, so I never did it.
Claire does not want flowers. The sanguine, the sanguine in me was heavier that day, I was a little more emotional, the flowers would be great.
You just want stuff done.
I just want stuff done. That is my love language. My love language is efficiency. Complete efficiency. The beautiful part can come after, but efficiency has to come first. That's why I love IKEA so much. Oh my goodness.
It's straight into the point.
To the point.
Unless you need to get out, you have to follow the arrows.
Or you have to go
and
potty.
Get lost.
Or you have to go potty. That's a problem.
Yeah.
But so if you're sanguine, and actually probably all temperaments, I'm going to say this challenge. The challenge is today to make a list of what you know your partner would love it if you did. They don't have to be big things. And then also make a list of things that you know you do that actively help your partner on a regular basis. That way you're checking in on yourself to make sure that I am doing some things. I am doing a lot of things. And then the other challenge, so it's a 3-pronged challenge. First, make your list of what you know that they would love. Second, make the list of what you know you do for them already. And third, check in. Check in with each other and say, honey, is there stuff that you wish that I could do? And it might not be. So when you ask that, be ready for a long list. But then follow that up with, if I could do those things. If it were, if that my schedule allowed. And that way you can look at the list that you made that you know that he or she would love and match it against what they're telling you. And I think that then you can balance what little extras. Because really, great marriages are defined by the little bit extra. They're not defined by big, grandiose things. They're not defined by, giant shows of love and affection. They're defined by bit by bit by bit every day. And just those little things that you do for each other. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I think that when I am sitting next to him and I think or say things like, I am sublimely happy, it is because he and I are truly equally yoked. And I absolutely believe that everybody can be equally yoked. And that doesn't mean that you're always here. It does mean that sometimes you're here and here. But because that yoke keeps you mostly in the middle, because you have the same values, the same things that you love, the same things that you, that you're striving for, you're almost always equal.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thoughts to close us up that you can think of?
No, not at the moment.
Yeah, I think we pretty much covered it. So this video started out being about getting Dad to step up, but he really wanted to make sure that applies to Mom too. It's not just about Dad. I don't want Dad to feel like, oh well, she's picking on us, because that's definitely not the case. I definitely think that both parties, regardless of what you do all day, if you're the mom that stays home all day, or you're the mom that goes to work and you send your kids to school, or you're the dad that stays home, or the dad that goes to work, regardless of what your job is within your family setting, there is always something that you can do, something small for your partner to make them feel more loved, more appreciated, and more like they're on the path with you. So do those things and have a wonderful week.
Goodbye.